anger can definitely be a huge positive. It can be something that can propel us, and it can be something that if we direct it and we harness it, can be used to move us forward in life to where we want to go. Hey, it's Rob with you again, and today I want to talk about mastering your state, because mastering your state is one of the major things that you can do for yourself that will propel you to the next level and help you to succeed and help you to get the result that you want more often than not. One of the major things that I've talked about already here is how our emotions influence our results. And because our emotions influence our thoughts, and our thoughts influence our actions, that's how our emotions influence our results. So there's kind of a through line there, right? Now, mastering your state has to do with your emotions again. And in case you missed my other video where I talked about getting in touch with your emotions, this is something that's very difficult. If you're a man watching out there, it was very difficult for me as a man to do. And traditionally, men are often discouraged from discussing our emotions or from showing our feelings. We're expected to kind of be this rock solid, stoic sort of personality, persona. And of course, as human beings, we feel emotions, right? I feel emotions, you feel emotions, of course. I think that we got into a dangerous space for a long time in society here in America where men were discouraged from sharing their emotions. And thankfully, I feel like that is changing. And I feel like that kind of trend is starting to reverse and we're starting to get to a point where it's more acceptable for men to share their emotions. And I think that's a great thing. But aside from sharing our emotions, we have to get in touch with our emotions and get to know ourselves on that level. And that's something that can be really scary and something that was very scary for me personally. And so I want to talk about kind of how I broke through that and some of the techniques I used in order to kind of change my emotional states on a regular basis and create the emotional states that I want to create. So what do I mean by that? Well, instead of being at the whim of my emotions and having my emotions kind of hit me and then affect my mood or affect my ability to perform or affect the outcomes, I decided that I can change the way I feel about things, right? Choice is a major part of this, and choice is something that's part of the human condition. And the one person that I heard say it best, or actually read, I never heard him speak, but Viktor Frankl wrote an amazing book called Man's Search for Meaning. If you've never read it, I really encourage you to read it. And if you have read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's a life changer. And Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, really comes down to, and I hate to oversimplify it because there's so much nuance in the book and there's so much wonderful material in there. But one of the major points that he makes in that book is that between stimulus and response, there is choice. Meaning that whatever happens, as some people say to us, I don't, I say for me, whatever happens for me is, and that's a whole mind shift in the first place, but whatever happens for me, I have a choice before I react to it, right? If you suffer from like road rage, and that's something that you know is an issue for you and that you're trying to correct and you just don't know how to wrap your head around it and how to go about it because it just kind of feels like these things trigger you, you are on an automatic response cycle that you can interrupt. And I was never a road rage person, but I did have kind of uncontrollable fits of rage over other things. And I've learned to corral that, and I've learned to control my response to those things. And anybody can do this. There isn't anything special about me compared to any other human being. It's just, it took hard work, okay? And it's going to take work. But in order to get to that point, there are things that you can do. And there are things that, first of all, what has to be done is to recognize those situations. If you know that you are prone to road rage, recognize when it's happening. And I'm not saying that you don't allow yourself to have emotions and that you suppress and smash down your emotions. I think that's one of the most harmful things you can do for yourself. And I'm also not saying that anger is a bad thing, because I think there's a negative connotation to anger. Anger can definitely be a huge positive. It can be something that can propel us, and it can be something that, if we direct it and we harness it, can be used to move us forward in life to where we want to go. And one of the things that Tom Brady talked about in an interview that I saw is he talked about the fact that anger was a motivator for him. And the best thing he could do for himself if he had a crummy first half was to get angry in the locker room and get out there in the second half and use that anger as fuel and as fire to perform better. And so if it's good enough for Tom Brady, it's good enough for us, right? So anger is not a bad thing. And it's got a negative connotation because uncontrollable anger is what a lot of people associate, I think, with anger in general. Uncontrollable anger can definitely be a bad thing. So this all comes down to control, right? And so how do we control our anger? How do we control our emotions? Not in the sense of not feeling our emotions, but in the sense of choosing our emotions. This sounds kind of like a foreign concept to some of you, I'm sure, because it sounded like it to me when I first heard it. But choosing our emotions is really what this comes down to. And so there are ways to condition ourselves to do this. One of my most important breakthroughs was a technique that I learned that's called mirror work. And I learned it from a book, and I modified it as I do most things that I learn from books. When I read and when I study things and when I go to seminars, there's a lot of material there. And much of it doesn't apply to me, or at least not in the way that the person intends it. And that's kind of what I have in mind here for you watching this video or listening to this in your car or whatever you might be doing. Don't take everything that I say at face value. That's nonsense. I would never recommend that. Use what you can and throw away the rest. All right? That's the biggest thing that I can say that will help to get you moving in the right direction. Because a lot of the material that is working for me may not work for you. Just like a lot of the material that people recommend in books and at seminars works for them and it doesn't work for me. So figure out what works for you. I'm only speaking from my experience, is my point. But mirror work was a huge thing for me. And this is probably was one of the most scary things I've ever done. And it sounds really scary to a lot of people when I describe it. And I'm going to describe it here for you. But that is standing or sitting or whatever makes you at least the most comfortable you can be. For me, it's standing. I have a full-length mirror in the back of my door. And I stand in front of it and I speak to myself. And I look into my own eyes. And I talk to myself in the mirror. And that alone is something that's difficult for some people to do. Just facing yourself like that, right? But specifically what I do is I talk to myself about how I'm feeling. I talk to myself in ways that support myself and in ways that demonstrate my unconditional love for myself, which is something that I've had to cultivate. And this mirror work is one of the things that helped me cultivate that. Standing in front of the mirror and saying I love you to yourself and looking yourself in the eye and really meaning it, that is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to do. And here's the follow-up to it that was even more difficult for me, is looking myself in the eye in the mirror and saying I forgive you. Forgiving ourselves and getting to that point where it's comfortable, and not even necessarily maybe comfortable still, but something that you can at least do on a regular basis. Huge breakthrough for me. And emotionally, it really got me settled, and it really got me to be able to handle my emotions better. I love you. I forgive you. And these are two things that I started saying to myself a long time ago, and I recently added a third, which is I'm proud of you. And so these are the things that I say to myself in the mirror. Now, to some of you, this may sound corny and ridiculous, and that's fine. I don't care. It works for me. It doesn't matter to me what you think of it. But leave a comment and let me know, because I'm curious and I want to see. And I want to see how many people have tried this kind of thing. And if you've never tried it, I encourage you to try it. And then come back and leave a comment and let me know how it was for you and what happened as a result. But this mirror work was a huge turning point for me. Another huge turning point for me was a birthday several years ago where I had a girlfriend. We broke up right before my birthday. She had booked a hotel to celebrate my birthday for a couple of days. And she told me, go ahead and just take the hotel and get away and spend some time with yourself. And it was good advice. And it sounds kind of strange, I guess, without much context to the story. That's okay. If you want the context, maybe we can talk about it sometime. But I did that. I went to this hotel and I stayed there for a couple of days by myself. And I brought a book with me that was called Mindset for Success, which I had never read, but I had owned for a little while. And it was kind of a weekend read. And one of the things that is in there is an exercise in basically recreating or rewriting our negative beliefs. And I did that it took me hours. It took me probably 5 or 6 hours. So again, this is something that it's not an easy thing to do. But I sat down and I thought about my limiting beliefs. And this was a directive from the book. And this was an exercise that really worked for me. And so I'm just passing it on to you and encouraging you to do it. But write down your limiting beliefs, as many as you can think of. And when you do that, first of all, putting a name to them and writing them down and getting them out, some of them you realize how ridiculous they are right away. Some of them you realize how much they've been holding you back. Some of them they seem like huge mountains to climb to overcome them. But the next phase of this, or the next step in the process, is that then once you've got these limiting beliefs written down, you then go back through the list and you rewrite them as empowering beliefs, as beliefs that will contribute to your success, as beliefs that can power you forward. Because there isn't any reason that you have to believe the negative beliefs or the limiting beliefs that you believe. These things are oftentimes fed to us through repetition, through adult influences as we grew up, through peer influences as we grew up, or even now as we are adults. And these things, all they are beliefs that other people have given to us. Other people have made us believe these things, so to speak. They didn't make us, but we learned these behaviors and these patterns through repetition. You can wash them out the same way, and you can repetitively restate these positive beliefs in place of the negative ones. So again, I took all these negative beliefs, I rewrote the positive belief that kind of counters them, okay, that goes up against that limiting belief. And I took that and took a picture of it, I printed it out, I took a picture of the printout and I put it as the background on my phone. So every single time I got on my phone, there were all my supportive, empowering beliefs. And pretty soon I started to brainwash myself. I also used note cards for this purpose. I took note cards, and I still do this to this day. I shuffle through some note cards every once in a while. I don't do it every day anymore, but I did every day for a while. I wrote on my note card, on one note card, one belief per note card, wrote down a empowering belief that I had created on a note card. And just like flashcards, I would take them and I'd take this stack of note cards and every day I would read them. And then to combine that with mirror work, I started reading them in front of the mirror. And I would look at the note card and I would look up and I would recite what was on the note card to myself. And if I didn't remember, no big deal, I'd glance down and eventually I started to remember them all. And what that did was lock them into my automatic response mechanism. It locked them into my ability to control my emotions because I had now these beliefs that were programmed into myself that I locked in that were counter to the limiting and negative beliefs that were causing me to have these emotional outbursts and these uncontrollable bursts of anger and things like that. The final piece of this puzzle was when I started to journal. And journaling is something that I've done off and on over the years, but I really decided to commit to it and put it on my calendar. And every night before I go to bed now, I journal. There's some nights where I voluntarily decide I'm not going to journal. I hate myself the next day for it. I don't really hate myself, but I do regret that I skipped journaling the night before sometimes, most times. because it's such a valuable experience, even if I never read the journal entry again. Just getting it out, just getting the ideas out and putting them out into the universe and getting them off of my mind and off of my heart and off of my shoulders, that in itself is empowering. So I really recommend journaling. And I know a lot of people have recommended journaling. You've probably heard the recommendation before. Many of you may journal out there. And if you do, then you understand the power of it. And if you don't, I really encourage you to do it and to make some time for it. And usually I set a timer. Set about a 10-minute timer. Sometimes it's 15, depending on how much time I have at the end of the night before I want to hit bedtime and turn the lights out. But journaling is usually the last thing I do before I turn the lights out. And I recap my day with a couple of specific prompts. And one of them is, was I better today than I was yesterday? That's the first thing I always ask myself in my journal. And that allows me to explore ways that I was better and ways that I wasn't, and then take some corrective action the next day to follow up, right? It also allows me to celebrate my wins. And so this process of journaling is something that, again, I highly recommend, but it's something that you need to make the time for if you want to do it. And that's one of the hardest things to do. So I encourage it because the daily practice of these materials is really where the mastery comes from. And so you can journal every once in a while. You can sit down and rewrite your negative beliefs and then never revisit them, the positive beliefs that you rewrote. You can do mirror work once in a while. But if you do it every day and you practice and practice and practice, number one, it gets more comfortable to do. And number two, it becomes a part of your habits, a part of your routine. And that's what leads to the mastery that allows you to break through and that allows you to control and master your emotions and ultimately master your state. So again, I'm just hoping to share some things that might help you here. These are things that work for me. They may not work for you, and that's okay. But if you enjoy this video and you've enjoyed what I've done so far with this channel, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get all the new updates every day when I post a video. Post videos most days. And if you really want to dive into this stuff with me, I'm going to invite you again to visit my website, which is www.yoursoulsource.com. That is where you can pick up my Performance Accelerator 3-day Success Velocity Intensive. And that is a program I created. It's completely free. You just sign up with your email address so that I can send you an email with all the materials in it. And it is a 3-day, intensive where you spend an hour a day. The design is to spend an hour a day, and you will learn some things about yourself, and you will be able to step into a new version of yourself, and you'll be able to build momentum that will keep you going forward and reaching your goals and making progress toward them every day, because the daily practice, again, is where it's at. The consistency. That's what you need to focus on. So, reminder, action is what leads to success. We have to take action, right? So take action and get over to the website and get the Performance Accelerator program and let me know what you think. And another reminder that excellence is a decision. That is something that I will say frequently, if not every single video, to remind you that excellence is a decision that we make. It's not something that just happens. You have to consciously decide, and you have to choose to be excellent, right? So come chase success with us over at the website, get the Performance Accelerator, and I'll see you in the next video.
I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.